Yes, this is my emotional support sleeveless hoodie. Thank you very much. Hey pals, it's me, Artie. The weather is horrific. I haven't done what I wanted to get done today, so if the only thing I get done today is recording at least one video, then that's my life. So this video is going to talk about the things that I have personally done which may or may not have contributed to my arm regaining some vascularization from being pulseless and unable to get a blood pressure reading because of my Takayasu's to now getting a blood pressure reading for the first time in roughly 3 years. I also forgot to add this in when I was recording, but I found this photo I took to try and like show you what I mean when I'm talking at this point. But basically the other thing I've noticed an improvement in is numbness in my right arm when I'm sleeping. I basically had to have a really annoyingly specific way of laying on my right hand side to avoid my arm going so dead it was painful. And now I can actually lay a little bit more freely on that side now without it going completely numb, which is, you know, a pretty big improvement, I would say. So generally a bit of background here. I have Takayasu's, and that is an inflammatory vasculitis that mainly affects the large blood vessels, I think is the right terminology for this. Mainly like the aorta, and sort of the big blood vessels that provide blood to the rest of your body. The damage that we have found through scans is the artery here, the brachial artery, was severely narrowed, or is severely narrowed, and I do think one of my subclavian, which provides blood to my left arm, has also got some narrowing, but not too much, if you know what I mean. I don't know what I'm saying. After my diagnosis in 2020 in June, I was sort of immediately put onto steroids. I was already on captopril and adalimumab. A bunch of videos on my channel on my meds and stuff like that, and my experiences with them all. And my team wanted to get me in for surgery. I don't remember if it was the end of 2020 or the end of 2021. Thing is, I never discussed it further because I basically said no thanks, but the likelihood would have been putting in a stent, or there are other surgeries that I talk about in my Takayasu's sort of 101 introduction blog post. But yeah, I chose to say no because now that we'd finally worked out what it was that was causing all of the pain in my right arm, I wanted to do as much research as possible into other options, because most of my research when it came to what happens to Takayasu's patients when they have surgeries for Takayasu's, there's not a lot of great things out there, especially couldn't find anything specific to the brachial artery. A lot of people's personal anecdotes involved the surgery caused them to flare. A lot of the surgeries quote unquote fail because inflammation can happen again in the exact same places. And we weren't really at like a crisis point with my arm. The damage had stabilized by that point, really. I don't know if it's gotten any worse necessarily, but there have been some improvements since my diagnosis in 2020. Yeah, so I also read generally these kinds of surgeries have to be redone every few years-ish, depending on the patient. And it seems like with Takayasu's patients, actually they have to be redone a lot more regularly because of inflammation-related problems. It's not the same sort of typical narrowed arteries for other reasons. It's narrowed arteries due to inflammation. So it's not as clear-cut as a lot of the surgeries I was reading about. I also didn't want to rush coming off of steroids, and I mean, I have made my point. More than 2 years down the line, I'm still on steroids because I have not been able to come off them. I haven't been at any kind of crisis point with my arm circulation to warrant any kind of real fear or concern for losing my limb in any way, because that is also a real possibility, that if your arm is not supplied with enough blood and oxygen, it can start to die off, basically. My body is still able to provide the muscles with enough blood and oxygen to not be dying off. So I kind of went with, look, I would much rather wait it out and see, do some of my own research, experimenting with some things, and see if there's anything that might work for revascularization. Yeah, about 2 years in is when I finally got my first blood pressure reading. I think that was earlier this year, in maybe March, April time. The last time I'd had a blood pressure reading was in A&E I think that was when I had erythema nodosum, if not maybe before that. But even then, these are like proper heavy duty blood pressure machines. I've so far still not been able to get blood pressure from like a home machine, but any reading is better than none, so that's what's been going on. I did do as much reading and talking to other people as possible about what the possibilities were like for developing capillary veins, and there's just not a lot of information out there. I think the vascular surgeon I briefly saw in the early sort of time of my diagnosis explained that generally the theory is that the more you exercise the limb and try to push through the pain that is caused by a lack of oxygen to the muscles, in theory you are pushing more blood to and through veins and arteries into your affected body parts. So for me, my right arm. So the theory is either it's possible to re-stretch the narrowed artery, or the encouragement of blood flow to that body part encourages capillary veins to grow and compensate for the artery that is narrowed / blocked. Again, I couldn't really find a whole lot of information on this in my time, especially like anything official. So I was basically just working on that as a concept, with what I could manage sort of in my life, to try and encourage that blood flow. So I kind of wanted to just talk through the things that I've been doing in those 2 years, and some of the things I've heard from some other people who have also been able to, I don't know, I don't have any official scans of this, but like from the blood pressure machine being able to take a blood pressure now after 3 years, it's assumed that I've probably developed collateral veins. So a lot of these things as well are very typical day-to-day stuff. For me, a really big part of doing anything is making it actionable with ADHD. Basically, I am more likely to do things if there's a reward at the end, for example. I'm also more likely to do things if there is some kind of like goal connected to those things. I realised I had new arm pain back in 2017 or 18. You can see the video about that as well for more details of how getting this diagnosis kind of came about. From doing push-ups for physio. I was seeing a physio for my hypermobility, so I was doing push-ups against the wall, and I just noticed that my right arm experienced a lot more pain, or just like it was experiencing pain. The other arm was completely fine. I did not have this issue with the other arm at all. The reflex when your arm hurts in the way that this pain does is that you want to stop doing the things that cause pain. But for me, my right hand is my dominant hand. It's what I write with. It was just very difficult to not do things with it, even though stuff hurt. And I'd already been through pain management and talked about pacing there. So with a lot of these things, I do encourage like pacing it. I don't think you should really push yourself too far, because that could still cause more problems in the end than help things. But doing day-to-day tasks also helped me work out if I was seeing any improvements as well, because some things I could then do for a bit longer, or I could sustain doing the activity through the pain for longer. Sometimes the pain wouldn't come on as quickly. So I just wanted to talk about a mixture of the different kinds of activities that I've been doing over the last 2-ish years that might help you experiment with what might be something you could feasibly fit into your routine. I will also double check if there are any kind of articles I can find, but I couldn't find anything originally that had been studied, and I never really got access to my vascular surgeon again to ask about vascular physio. I know it's a thing. I have a friend who used to be like a assistant in like the vascular physio wards locally, but it's not what she did was not quite what I was looking for, so wasn't super helpful for my particular case. And I just never heard back from the vascular surgeon. So some of my everyday tasks, or like regular tasks that I did, were literally things like washing myself in the shower. I know a lot of us have problems with washing our own hair. I definitely noticed it when I use I struggle gripping things for long periods of time, because it's like a searing pain into sort of this muscle here for me. My way of sort of working around that is I try to not hold things. So instead of having some kind of exfoliator scrub or brush, I wear exfoliator gloves, and that's how I exfoliate my skin in the shower or the bath. But also the motion of exfoliating my skin is still needing and encouraging blood flow to my arm. Shaving is a bitch, because you have to grip something whilst you do it. I briefly tried using like a safety razor, but they don't come with, they're like all metal, or the one that I have is all metal. So trying to grip onto it was even more difficult. So unfortunately I had to go back to disposable razors, just because they were a lot easier to grip. Brushing my teeth, washing my hair, those sorts of things. I also sort of have under this like home chores, putting things away in the cupboards, because like a lot of these things, if you think about it, is kind of like if you went to the gym and did reps of weightlifting, but I find gyms far too monotonous to do something like that. So like I said, goal orientated, having a motivation for doing the thing and a reward at the end of it helps me a lot to just do these kinds of things, which have benefited my arm quite a lot. A lot of cleaning activities, like wiping down surfaces, dusting things, sweeping or mopping the floor, even like hoovering. I hate hoovering though because of the noise, but hoovering. One I find really difficult is hanging up washing, because it's the holding my arms up and using my hands. It's just really, it just hurts really fast. So that's one of the tasks that I use as like, how am I doing with this? Is this sort of getting a little bit easier? In the summer, I watered my plants outside a lot, and that meant carrying I don't even know how many litres, but like a big full watering can. So it was a lot of like actually, weightlifting basically. I also think in one of my videos from the summer, I think it was the doing a bit of exercise every day video, when it comes to like home or furniture DIY things, I was painting something this summer. Oh, I think I was just repainting some of our like garden furniture, and I realised that was actually a lot easier than it has been. And I think I talked about this more in that video, but I remember, not sure how many years ago necessarily, maybe 3 or 4, it was in my first sort of year or so of being back home after university, of painting my TV stand, and that being really, really difficult to do. So like painting walls, things like that is really good for encouraging blood flow into your arm. Other people on like sort of Takayasu's groups, someone else mentioned that they are a screen print artist. So you put like a screen down and you sort of push, I don't know whether it's paint or ink. It's been a while since I did screen printing. But like the motion of pushing the paint with whatever the thing's called has helped them with growing collaterals as well. So I feel like a lot of hobbies can be used to both encourage the blood flow as well as like be a good way of monitoring how you're doing. My favourite, this is going to be very strange, but my favourite one is stroking my dog, because she has the kind of fur that you can just sort of like stroke her in all directions, and she really likes a good like shaken, patterned rub down. I'm sure I'll show you some videos, but that makes my arm hurt. And here she is. Hello, church. But I mean, also it's great for endorphins, right? Patting your pets. So yeah, that's my personal favourite. When it comes to exercises generally, like I've said, a lot of this is just sort of like a day-to-day weightlifting kind of vibe. Sometimes we'll do push-ups, but I don't do them on the floor because I have a lot of back problems and like wrist pain. So I usually do them against a wall or on like a counter. So instead of being flat on the floor, I'm sort of like against something a bit more upright. Sometimes I do that when I'm waiting for food to be done cooking. That's one I don't do very often because it's very boring. When it comes to weightlifting as well, specifically, I do find that little weight, lots of reps is kind of the way to go if you are just trying to encourage the blood flow. Again, like because of my ADHD, I've never really been able to count my reps. It is far too boring for me to count my reps. But over the few years, I have noticed that the weights I have at home are very light to me now, and I also use them as part of my routine for getting ready for blood tests, which I have also done a video on because it helps the blood flow to your arms. And because this is something I still don't know the reason for, but my arm best for blood tests is actually my right arm, the one with the narrowed artery. Now I don't know why. My left arm, most people can't really find a decent vein in my elbow. It has happened occasionally. I have also had the one in my hand used before and possibly used, mentioned once or twice, but mainly it's the two in my right arm's elbow. So I mainly weightlift with this arm for blood tests. 2 in 1, baby. So yeah, I have no idea why that is, but that is when I do majority of my like traditional weightlifting, is when I have a blood test coming up.
And I used to get the blood flowing.
And then I also remember having a conversation with my chiropractor. No opinions on chiropractors here, please. He has helped me with a lot of my symptoms of hypermobile bodies, so I will not have any chiropractor slander here. I'm not telling anyone they should go to a chiropractor, but I will not have their slander. thank you very much. But having that conversation with him, I can't remember what it was specifically, but it did lead to me thinking like, oh, okay, actually doing something as simple as using and like just squeezing a stress ball over and over again is another way you can just get the blood pumping to your hands. And it's relatively low key. You can do it anywhere. Carrying around a stress ball. You know, I feel like a lot of the ways that I try to incorporate these movements is stuff that I would do already or stuff that I can do whilst I'm waiting for something else. Because again, ADHD, autistic, I'm kind of a fidgeter, both for like, yeah, ADHD hyperactivity fidgeting, but also autistic stimming, which is a calming mechanism, that actually doing some of those things with my hands is helpful and calming mentally, but also adds to promoting the blood flow to my arm. I definitely feel like my main struggles I have to work with pacing on tends to be if I go out shopping by myself and have heavy bags to walk around with. I find it really difficult to hold bags on this arm, as well as bathing is really hard still, and anything that is too much of like fine motor skills. I find holding pens for too long, or having to cut or peel food items hurts too much. Cleaning my glasses is the fucking worst, dudes. Yeah, too much of like having to hold things and be like careful either not to hurt myself or break whatever I'm holding tends to just be a bad mix for me. I can still do some of those things, but it tends to be that some of them I've had to make adaptations for. Like, I can't grate cheese because I swear to God I always take off my knuckles, but actually my cheese grater is a thing where you put the cheese in, hold it, and you wheel it round. So actually I'm getting some good blood flow to my arm still. But yeah, like I want to make it clear as well, if you do need to make adaptations to help making existing and living your life easier, that is not a bad thing. Do not feel shame or ashamed because you have decided you need to use adaptive homeware, kitchenware, mobility aids to help you live life better for yourself. I've made a lot of adaptations for myself that I have found really helpful. These are just things that I try to do here and there when I feel up to it, just to kind of keep a low grade, encouraging blood flow to my arm going through my life day to day. And I know it can be scary for a lot of people, especially those who maybe haven't found a sort of disabled community, to make the choice to finally use mobility aids or adaptive homeware. Or even clothing. Adaptive clothing is a thing too. So I just want to let you know that if you are one of those Takayasu's patients who maybe hasn't really found a group of chronically ill friends or an online community yet, if you are thinking about trying to use an adaptive aid of some kind, you should do it. If you think it may help make your quality of life better, you should definitely do it. Like, there are so many other ways that you can encourage the blood flow or do all these other things that doctors tell you to do. You know, sometimes using a walking stick or wheelchair to get around will just help you maintain enough energy to be able to care for yourself fully, or be able to care for yourself better. You know, we're all different. I personally have not found a huge amount of benefits in many adaptive things that are quite mainstream. I do have a walking stick, but it's not often I use it, especially with my arm. Funny thing is, actually a walking stick is not always super helpful when you have mobility issues in your arm. But I do use it sometimes. My main ones tend to be kitchen related things, adapting my environment for my sensory issues and my fingers, like finger splints because of my bendy fingers. But yeah, I just wanted to throw in the PSA. Don't feel like you have to do any and all of these things. I just want to give some ideas of what I've been doing that I have noticed has caused my arm pain, and I try to experiment with that. You know, that's kind of what I want to do with my videos, is help give people ideas for what they could possibly do to help deal with or manage their conditions, especially seeing as the understanding of a lot of chronic conditions, let alone Takayasu's, is yeah, the understanding is not really there. There's not a lot of online resources. So yeah, I just wanted to talk through some of the things that I do, some of the things I've heard other people doing, some of the things I've tried out and maybe don't do very often. But you know, who knows, it might help or benefit somebody else out there. But we are all individual people. We all have different struggles. Mine was more specific to my arm. You know, if you have ideas for what would be beneficial to anyone who's dealing with this with their legs, definitely leave some comments down below, because that's something I personally have not thought about. But yeah, hopefully this video is helpful. Again, I will have a look and see if I can find any new resources on this. I'll leave any links in the description, and if I have found any, maybe I'll include screenshots in the video as well. But it's been a while. It's been a while since I've looked, but last I looked, it did not exist. So I did go and do a bit more research to have a look into seeing if there was anything that did come up. Nothing came up specifically about Takayasu's, an improvement in the disease, but I did find some other sources and resources that I think are relevant to this and can be helpful. So there were definitely a few articles that came up that were generally like how to strengthen veins and arteries, and it was talking about exercise, so I wanted to include it in this video. A lot of them were talking about kind of a mixture of exercise can help with improving blood supply around your body and also encouraging collateral/capillary veins to develop more. So yeah, there were some that was saying like low impact options, including like riding a bike, swimming, yoga, walking was a big one. And there were some sources that just explained that the more you regularly exercise, the more blood vessels grow, because you're making them expand by pumping the blood around, which is something that I did talk about in the video that my vascular surgeon mentioned. But there was also just generally showing that any exercise is good and helpful. So it was also talking about like longer, low intensity sessions of cardio. So like the walking can increase capillary density by more than 25%. So that's, I think it means more or larger, but also HIIT workouts. So high intensity cardio, circuit training, that sort of thing. However, I have also generally read and understood things that high intensity circuit training HIIT workouts may not be the best option for Takayasu's patients. I don't remember exactly where I read that, but I've personally found that when I do those exercises, the pain is way too much for me, so I would much rather stick to a more lower impact exercising like walking, weights, things like that. But like, yeah, these studies showed that generally either works for this. There was also parts that discussed that heavy weight training has shown that it generally on its own has no impact, positive or negative, but combining it with cardiovascular exercise, there has been improvement shown. However, there are also sources that say that what I'd also talked about in this video already, that the lower weight, higher reps can help increase capillary density. So I generally find food and exercise science is severely under-researched and is usually dripping with a lot of fat phobia and ableism. So I think that's part of why finding some of these resources has been very difficult, because a lot of them just aren't very good. like generally. I also realized during my research that collateral and capillary blood vessels are different things, which I did not know. So I've used them interchangeably because I don't really fully understand either, but I have a feeling that generally these things will be helping to develop either or both. But yeah, I learned that apparently generally it's just part of like the body's survival mechanism, that collateral blood vessels usually are activated when a larger blood vessel is blocked. Even though it's part of like a body's like functional mechanism, it's not really fully understood how it works. Again, a lot more resources continuing to say that aerobic cardiovascular exercise like running, walking, things like that can help with developing the collateral blood vessels to form more and work better and for longer, because yeah, they need to get larger to be able to accommodate for the blood flow that's been lost from the larger blood vessels. So yeah, the exercising is helpful to encourage the capillary and or collateral veins to grow enough to help overcome the blockage or narrowing of a major artery. So hopefully this was all helpful and interesting. You can finish the video now. Yeah, any vascular physios out there? Let's have words. Let's have words. Also, I just want to quickly shout out Bob and Brad are my favourite online physiotherapists who have really helpful videos. Yeah, they have helped me a lot. So that's my video for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's been helpful to you or somebody you know. Leave a like on the video. It helps with the algorithm and things like that, and helps me reach more people who might be needing my help. Yeah, let me know in the comments if any of this was helpful for you, or if you have any tips for other body parts, and subscribe to my channel. But yeah, I will see you next week. Bye.